Welcome to the Gamble Smart channel. My name is Mark, and today we are talking about how slot machines actually work, okay? This is your one-stop shop video that will teach you all about how slot machines really work. I am a slot technician. I've also worked very closely with people that have written the math for these games, as well as producers of the games themselves. We are here to educate you to become better gamblers, and that is by teaching you how this stuff works and let you focus on stuff that you actually have control over.
We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadromist. This is Burn Power coming to you on a kind of a rainy, drippy day here in early spring in Tbilisi, Georgia. If you don't know where that is, look it up on a map. It's not in America. Well, I've been thinking about something, and allow me to share it with you. It takes some of the things I've already discussed in other places, like card tricks and propaganda and social media and all sorts of other stuff, and kind of pulls them together a bit. Now, this is an idea that has recently occurred to me, so I'm sort of thinking out loud, and maybe you can contribute something to the idea if this sparks anything in your mind. Before we do, let me remind you of a couple things. One, is anyone interested in the second gathering in Georgia? If you are, let me know soon. Secondly, if a link below, and the address is in the description, reckoningmotions@yahoo.com. Also, if you feel like helping the channel out, $25 will get you a puppet book, and I've got a few that are on their way. If you haven't gotten yours yet, don't worry, I've been waiting to accumulate a few. It's been going slower than I thought, but that's okay. And if you can't afford anything, I understand these are tight times, then do subscribe, do share the video, do like it, help the algorithms, the blind idiot gods they are, find the channel. And with that out of the way, let's talk about the very long con that is being run on us by ourselves. What do I mean? Well, speaking of cons, confidence games, let me give you another con, a confession. Now, when I am editing videos, there is often a period where I'm waiting for things to render. I have extremely slow Macs from 2012. And I really need to upgrade them, but I simply can't afford it. But while I'm waiting for these interminable rendering processes, I do numbers of things. One of the things I do when it's a short, I'm looking at it and it says it's about 5 minutes or so, is I will play a simple game on the other computer. I've learned not to play it on these because these are just so slow, the games will gum it up, such is life. But I do things like I play chess, and I set chess on the easiest settings possible. And I run through it over and over and over, which some of you may say, well, that's not playing chess. And you're right. I'm not playing chess. I'm doing something else. Same with, I have a hearts game that I play with cards. And I do it over and over. Not as much as the chess, which I've been doing for years and years by this point. But nevertheless, I will play this simple game of hearts. And I've noticed certain things out of that as well. And then there's a game of snakes and ladders that I play, and some other stuff. And I've noticed with all of these, there are certain strange patterns that begin to emerge. So, for instance, with chess, I notice if I do one thing, the board will always do the other thing. So I can predict it at this point. And I really play chess. That is to say, I don't take it so seriously that I'm trying to win. Otherwise, I'd keep ramping up the difficulty level on the computer. But I mean, I'm playing patterns. I'm making patterns as I'm going. I say things, I make little rules for myself, like, okay, you can only have one piece at a time attacking and then go from there. And once that piece is done, you can then use another unless it's threatened. Or I say things like, this time we can only use the queen. After we open it and get it out, it's all the queen. Or, I mean, I've done endless amounts of these weird little rules in my head. And I've also, it's just too complicated. But then with the hearts game, I noticed certain things start to show up. With the chess, I noticed the patterns. And that's what I'm playing, is I'm playing the patterns. I'm not playing chess. Secondly, with the hearts game, I started noticing that there's some kind of lack of randomness. Now, supposedly, this is online, supposedly the hearts game has a kind of generated randomness to it. But I've noticed all sorts of odd little details, how it will trip you up. You think you know what you're doing, and then suddenly it'll like recalibrate or something like that. It's called seeded randomness, so that it starts at a point. And it's really complicated. Also with the snakes and ladders, it's really weird. I noticed there is actually no choice involved. That is to say, it controls the dice, it controls the movements on the board. So there's none of that. Like when I control dice, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm doing enough to know that certain things won't land. Like if I look and there's 2 5s in my hand, if I do it a certain way and knock it down a certain way, I can be pretty sure 2 5s won't appear in my hand again. But with the snakes and ladders, they have digital dice. It's amazing how much I can predict how much exactly which dice might be showing up next. It's not completely predictable, but I notice there's patterns, and the same with the patterns in the hearts deck. The truth of the matter is, if you play with a real deck of cards, you get something much closer to randomness. But if you play with the machine, you're getting a kind of simulated randomness. Now, this is a weird concept. Bear with me. The actual name for it is pseudo-random number generation. Pseudo-random number generation. I love that. Pseudo-random number generation, or PRNG. Now, most digital randomness is not truly random. It's programmed by somebody. And that's where this weird thing starts to show up. So, for instance, sometimes the randomness is not reseeded after every game. Seeded like seeds in the ground, the seed number, the way it starts. Other times it's not reseeded effectively. It's not reseeded in such a way as to be truly random again. Depends on what the program is, really. It's out of my control. But it does make sure I get frustrated that, like right now, the pattern I'm trying to do is to go through the whole set of hearts and to do it without an error. I'm not trying to win anything. I just want to do one time with no errors. And it sees me. I think what it saw me do it the first time, and I had only the number 1. I didn't make any mistakes. If you know hearts, you know what I'm talking about. But I've figured out certain things. But again, what am I playing here? Do I care about hearts? No. Do I care about the cards? A bit, aesthetically. But I care about the pattern. Now, there are patterns in dice rolls and patterns in card dealing and such. For instance, one interesting thing about dice rolls is because it is very random, unless the dice have been shaved or something like that, manipulated. You could get something like the number 2 show up 3 or 4 times. It's really hard. You can't predict that unless you are good at cheating. But the point is this. On the digital dice rolls, it's never random like that. It'll never do what real randomness comes up with all sorts of configurations. Rather, it gets to be predictable randomness. And the longer I play, the more I start to feel like I'm cracking it in some weird, probably not healthy way. So the randomness is essentially seeded into the start. But it's an illusion of randomness, which is close enough to it that we think we understand it. But here's the weird thing. So, does the AI, the simplistic AI that is controlling the dice or the cards, does it know that I have the Queen of Spades? It might. How do I know? If I'm sitting across from different people, unless they're cheaters, they don't know. Although when you're playing, you can say, well, that person doesn't, or they would have put the queen in at that point, or that, you can kind of guess. And then, I sometimes while playing this will choose sacrificial moves that a digital machine will never make, So, but at the same time, does that digital device know I have the Queen of Spades, or how many hearts I have, or how many diamonds, or how many clubs? Does it know? Now, supposedly it doesn't, but then again, it's controlling all of the action. And that's really bizarre when you think about it. The more you think about it, the more like, oh yeah, it is the same machine controlling everything. So, in a normal game, when you see the cards face down or you see them up against your opponent's face, you say, I don't know what's in their hands. But in a computer game, well, maybe it does. Particularly if it's not programmed well or programmed to know these things. Which may get you to start thinking about digital gambling. All those slot machines in Vegas, all those weird little electronic devices, online poker games and such. And in fact, these things are very easy to program in such a way to make you see what it is they can program the wins enough to make you want more, which is the essence of gambling, isn't it? You see the numbers all go, plum, 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 and you get a bunch of money, quarters or whatever, coins, and inside of you go like, endorphin rush. You're happy, you made $20 in quarters. So what? It's not after that. It's after the rest of the quarters in your pocket. And the truth is, there are state regulations that govern all of these machines. So obviously Las Vegas has them and other places. But how well are they regulated? Who knows? I'm sure that there are officials who would say, oh yeah, we watch all this stuff. But in fact, do they? How do they know? Are the state officials at all good at coding? See, that's the problem. There is a disconnect there between regulations and people who are regulators and the actual computer people who program. And it's funny to me that these kinds of things, we see the pattern. That is to say, we see the game. There's an aesthetic quality. There's the cards laid out. Here are my cards. There's the numbers, the lemons, or the whatever coming up on the slot machine. There's the hand in poker that you're seeing through a screen. It's all being fed to you through screens, you see. And we see those, and we say, ooh, ooh, ooh. I see the snakes and the ladders. And I realized very quickly there is nothing in the snakes and patterns. Well, why not? Snakes and patterns. Snakes and ladders online that is at all that you, the person, can control. All you can do is hit the dice button. It throws a die, and then you go a certain number of steps forward, 1 to 6. That's all you can do. However, everything else is controlled. And you don't control the throw. Now, what I have done is I've experimented with weird sorts of well, what if I wait a few minutes? Maybe what's going on in the background is the numbers are rolling and rolling and rolling, and if I hit at a certain point, something will happen. And I have experimented with that, and interestingly enough, I have gotten my numbers more often doing that, waiting, say, 30 seconds or so, than by hitting it. It wants you to hit it immediately. Why am I going on at length about this? Well, the truth is there's a lot of this involved. There is a problem here. I call this whole thing where you are lured in to these kinds of games, or it's not just games though, as we'll see. It's almost everything these days. All the stuff happening on the screen, all our social media is controlled by similar architecture behind the scenes, pseudo randomness. And I've dubbed this a long time ago. I dubbed this Mafia Aesthetics. And I'm not joking about that. I actually mean Mafia Aesthetics. What do I mean? I mean that here's how I discovered what Mafia Aesthetics are. When I was young, I used to go down to the local corner shop in my neighborhood in California, and I would buy a pack of baseball cards or non-sports cards. I used to love getting the Batman cards with art by Norm Saunders. I really looked for the Mars Attacks cards, though those were largely done. But here's the thing. So if you get a pack of these cards, there's 5 cards in it, or maybe 10, depending on the pack, and a stick of bubble gum. The bubble gum was the most worthless thing, but I think by including the bubble gum, they could put it under a different tax bracket or something like that. A bit of a con being run on you right there. So let's say there were 52 cards in the deck. Now, if you bought, say, 3 packages of, what were they, 10 each, 5 each, didn't matter. You would, I think they were 10. I'll give you a little something. You bought 3 packets of these things, and you opened them up. There's a good chance you would get, if it was 30, you'd get, no, it would be 5. We're going to give it away that quickly. You would get 1 or 2 duplicates. And you would get some numbers, and it would make you think, oh my goodness, I could try to get the whole set. Now, if you kept buying from the same box, then what would happen is you might not get all the cards, and you get lots of duplicates. And the reason is when you came back to the store, some other kid may buy another couple of packets and take the card you want. If you've ever collected any of these trading cards, you know what I'm talking about. Now, I did come to realize at a certain point, if you bought an entire box, which was more money and you get lots of duplicates, you would get the whole set. So that's how it worked. Now, some of these cards were so cool that it made it worth it. it was worth it to get the complete sets of these little artistic works. I did collect baseball cards for a while, and I had one series out of 7 or whatever. Or 9 was it? I can't remember. But then I realized, oh man, you have to buy so many of these things. I was kind of smart that way. Later, I realized that in the 1990s, I was collecting comic books. I was weaning myself off from them. And comic books are another weird addictive pattern. And they get you by the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the front. But there were some cards that were starting to be sold. So, for instance, they had a second set of Mars Attacks cards. They had other kinds of cards related to movies and such. So, because I was kind of investigating the genre stuff, and some of these things were kind of cool and had cool art, I started buying, boxes, because I knew better. I knew better than to buy individual packs. So then there was one series, which I won't go into what it was, but I'll just simply say this. If you bought an entire box, you could not be assured of getting the whole set. And if you bought another box, you couldn't be assured of getting the whole set. And if you bought a third box, which I was stupid enough to do, you couldn't be assured of getting the whole set. This is Mafia Aesthetics. The earlier version is just, how do we make more money off the kids? But this one, evil, because you could figure out a way to get the whole set of these cards, but you can't figure out a way. If after 3 boxes, I am still 20 cards short out of a 100 card set, what is the point? Which is what I immediately came to, and I said, okay, I've been taken, and I'm never going to do this kind of thing again. I stopped collecting cards, except when I knew I could get the whole set. There were a few things I did later, but I just said, I want the whole set. I do not want all those extras. But at that time, I started to think of this idea of Mafia Aesthetics, because I was convinced that there was someone behind the scenes controlling the way that these went into the boxes to make sure I bought as many as possible and that there was no conclusion. And essentially what Mafia Aesthetics are, it involves aesthetics. It takes something visual for you to be hooked by this, but it knows you're looking to accomplish an act. A lot of these things were developed in very sleazy adult, if you get my meaning, stores. They were, there would be these weird machines you'd put money into, and, I guess if you ever seen Paris, Texas, the guy puts money in and then the thing comes down again, and you end up putting tons of money in that device. But also, you'd pay for little clips of this or that. And because the Mafia knew you were doing something you didn't feel good about, they knew you'd never complain. You'd never go to, the Better Business Bureau and say, so I was in, adult show world, and it's just like, who's going to do that? Yeah. So, but that's what Mafia Aesthetics are, is to give you enough to hook you, but not enough to complete the action to keep you in line. Which is why gambling is such a Mafia aesthetic, because it's all about you thinking you're going to win, you getting a little nibble. I mean, certain kinds of drugs are like that too. Give this person a little free this. But now, some of you may be already racing ahead of me and saying, hey, Bern, I'd like to talk to you about some video games. Exactly.
Hey everyone, hope you're all having a great day, and a big shout out to everyone who's just hopped on the hype train. This is where you get the hottest deals and the freshest promo codes for Raid Shadow Legends. Today, we're unboxing my little spring gift for you. 2 brand new champions, exclusively from my channel for new players. But wait, there's more. We've also got 2 spicy promo codes that just dropped, one for newbies and one for all players. Yeah, you heard me right, freebies for everyone.
What's happened in the video game world, it used to be, you'd buy your package that looked a bit like buying a DVD, and you had a disc, and you put it in your PlayStation or whatever device you were using. I don't know enough about it to care. And then you'd play the game. Then they started realizing, hey, we can make more money if we come out with other versions of the game. And then they started realizing, oh, why don't we create versions of the game that are free and that set up, almost impossible odds and let you, in order to crack the game, you have to get more points. And how are you going to get these points? You're going to pay for them. So, a lot of games today are conducted under the idea of what's called freemiums. And a freemium is like a premium, which is what the word sounds like. But the freemium is, we get you into the initial phase, and we give you enough to make it seem like fun and enjoyable, and then you realize, oh, there are 50 levels to this, and in order for me to get through it, I need a lot more help. So I need the gems, or I need the more clues and cryptic ideas. I need more players, whatever it is. And then you have to start paying. Interestingly enough, the printing world is based on this now, too. So you get the printer, it's relatively cheap. And then you have to go find the ink. And the ink is like, ouch. It costs a lot of money. And then they're constantly upgrading the ink, and so that it's new containers, and after a while, it's just a nightmare. Well, this is all variations on Mafia Aesthetics. Whether or not the Mafia is involved or not, I do sometimes wonder about the games. And I'll tell you why, is because traditionally, organized crime has been involved with slot machines, pinball machines, arcade games, for the same reason.
What do you see when you look at a pinball machine?
I kind of see like a giant slot machine.
There's shiny things and bright lights.
Letters that don't mean anything, that aren't linked up to anything. It's just designed for beeps and boops.
People tend to get overwhelmed by pinball because they think the game is random.
I never know what to look at.
Every time I play, I feel like the ball just goes wherever the hell it wants to go.
I'm just like hitting things aggressively and hoping it works out.
But just like any arcade game, you can learn how to get better. Don't take it from me, though.
My name is Roger Sharp, and I've been playing pinball for far too long.
There's so much luck here, not skill. Yeah. I'm breaking the bank here, and I don't even know what I'm doing.
But what you're doing kinetically is manipulating flippers to hit a ball.
What is an arcade game? The old arcade video games. Well, it's a device that you put in endless quarters to try to get to the final level. Perfect Mafia Aesthetics. And because they know its primary user base is going to be young kids, teenagers, they know they will never complain. They will just keep putting endless quarters in because they're so, I'm going to beat this thing. And they don't think about what's actually going on with the architecture behind the game. And of course, the architecture behind the game is also devised by engineering people who work for whom? I wonder. I wouldn't want to say for certain, but if all of the slot machines and pinball machines were operated by various organized networks, what's to say that a lot of video games aren't as well? I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know the answer because all of this is hidden from view. But you are doing something to yourselves. Which brings us to an interesting thing. Take gambling again. Now, a lot of gambling, for instance, lotteries. It's interesting to me in New York City, whenever the lotto was, it's like $280 million lotto. And suddenly everyone would line up. And I'm sitting there going like, guys, don't you realize the odds are completely against you? And the fact that the price is so high, but the lines are so high at the same time means there's no hope. Even maybe you'll get it and you'll share it among 16 people, or maybe you won't. And I remember there was a guy in New York who was a street vendor, and he was selling, old magazines and stuff on the street. But he started talking to me about the numbers. I'm going, what numbers? And he goes like, for the lotto. And he goes, yeah. And he pulled out this book of scrawled notes, and he showed me endless lists of numbers, and how he said, this is what came up then, this is what came up then, this is what came up then. I am sure my numbers are going to come up. I'm going to keep playing these numbers. Different people have these different, like, really mystical, magical thinking going on with the lotteries and gambling and stuff like that, which is where I'm going here. Because so you've got Mafia Aesthetics, which are underneath so much of what we do. How much of our social media is controlled by these things? The swipes on, dating apps, the social media engagement, getting an extra, seeing the little hearts and the little like buttons on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. All of these things, they know that you respond like a Pavlovian dog. I respond. We all respond to these things. Don't act like you're not here. Unless you don't use these things at all, you respond. Now, some people get to the point where they give up on responding, but then they're backing away from everything, which is fine. I haven't got a problem with that. But it's this weird sort of thing. So my channel doesn't make a particular, I've got a couple thousand people who watch this video. If I'm lucky, it'll get 1,000 views. But the same principles work for the people who get 50 million. There is a girl I just saw. She left a note about how she was giving up on her channel because it had been getting 250,000 views per video, and now it was getting something like 10, 20,000 views, which I would consider really respectable numbers. But she felt, I'm losing it. Part of it, she was always writing about Star Wars, and now Star Wars has basically imploded and is a worthless franchise, and she has nothing more to write about it. So she's starting to write about other things, but those things don't generate the passion and animosity that Star Wars does. So she's kind of in a bind there. But she's following the numbers. She's following the patterns of engagement. All of these things. There's a thing I now call pattern addiction. Now, what pattern addiction is different. Now, I often think that when people talk about, for instance, gambling addiction, it's not about the money. Well, it is. People say, oh, I think I'm going to win more. But it's more about what you get addicted to is not the money, but the patterns. You think you saw it, you think you understood it, and now, especially if you factor in what I've just told you about Mafia Aesthetics, and who knows what the engineers have really encoded into this stuff. The pattern addiction is real, and trust me, the people who run everything behind the scenes, who are making so much money off of us, no matter what they are, whether they are connected with them or not, it doesn't matter who, are using psychological conditioning. They're looking into group psychology. They're looking into how you act and how I act, but not as individuals, but as groups of people. So, pattern addiction is real. I think it's real in video games, that you may say, oh, I'm just trying to do this, but what you're really trying to do is to accomplish a pattern, to finish a pattern, which is why I said in the Hearts game, if I can just I get no points against me for a series of, for a whole game, I'm done. I think I can do it. But again, why am I obsessed with that? It's the same reason you're obsessed with things. It's an addiction to patterns. There's gambling addiction, which I'm convinced is a pattern addiction. Believe it or not, the old porn addiction is a pattern addiction. Because, for one thing, everything online is something you're trying to get meaning out of. So whenever I've challenged friends about, are you spending too much time watching video games? Are you spending too much, what's going on with gambling and stuff? It's all about meaning, actually. It's a defective version of meaning. I think that if I can accomplish this goal, there was a really funny thing. There was a guy playing some sort of, it looked like Candy Crush or something. I don't know. I didn't pay that much attention. But he was sitting there on the Georgian buses, and we were going through several stops, and it was just, had to slide in right next to him, and the bus was totally packed, and he didn't even notice anybody else. He was just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And all of a sudden, he shouted out to everyone in the bus, it's just like, I did it! I won X whatever game. And everyone applauded, because everyone knew that they too are caught in this thing. And what the pattern addiction wants you to do is to get a sense of accomplishment. Now, why do I say it works with dating apps and all the rest of it? It works with the smartphone uses. It works with social media. Why? Because we look at these things for meaning. We're hoping we can find someone who loves us. So we use a dating app. We're hoping we can find an image that somehow is transcendent. Believe it or not, that's what's going on in adult sites. Although obviously exactly the opposite is happening. But nevertheless, it's motivated by these strange needs we have to find meaning. Smartphones, just the use. I got one, thanks to Peter in the Netherlands, I got one, and I'm using it now, and I'm going, now I see. Now, I'm not as bad as most people, but I realize I have to get an alarm clock in my bedroom. Because this thing should not be next to my head. It's way too easy to turn off the alarm, get up, and start looking at it. And I am sure all of you know what I'm talking about. So my question is, what kind of a clock will I get? But I will get one. I will get this under control. It is tough. We all are going through this. And people are using this against us, these patterns. Now, it's not that patterns are bad. Jonathan Peugeot talks endlessly about the meaning in patterns, beautiful patterns, how we are born to see patterns. And in fact, we see so much meaning in patterns. We see meaning in music is all patterns. Tarkovsky once said, there's something mechanical about music, and that's true. The mathematical relationship of the notes, I mean, even numbers themselves are patterns. They are not, for instance, you don't walk along the street and find numbers laying on the ground. There's something only in here where we say 2 + 2 = 4. Because when you walk around on the street, there's nothing in nature that tells you 2 + 2 = 4. It is a human thing that is part of a gift to us to be able to create so much out of mathematics. Science is a pattern. We're looking for patterns. Art is a series of patterns. Religion is rituals and patterns. Finances, patterns. Nature itself is full of patterns. And in fact, just as numbers aren't, dropping out of the sky, when you take a walk in nature, you're doing something. We are connecting to it on a spiritual way, but I believe that spiritual way has to do with how we are organizing these things in our mind as we look. For instance, in nature, the pattern is often the big vista and the fractal individual image. So this tree is different than that tree, though they are both species of the same tree. And if I go far enough to the edges of the forest, I will see the trees changing somehow, and they're different in the middle of the forest than they are from the edge. And we start noticing these things. This is where science comes from, is our noticing these things, noticing patterns. However, just as we become entranced by the patterns, we can also be seduced by the patterns. Patterns are not God. God is God. Patterns are not human. We are human. Patterns are, I believe, God's gift to us to see patterns. But, for instance, consider music. Now, when people go into a place, we'll call it a club or a concert, sometimes it's just, all that's going on is the patterns are there for manipulating good results that we feel. So we hop up and down and, we say, wow, I'm having a good time. But that's like pattern manipulation. There's a book that came out a few years ago called This Is Your Brain on Music. And this guy goes through all of these things. He says, it's after 20 minutes that the pattern becomes hypnotic when it repeats over and over and over. Hence what's going on in electronic music and such. And he talks about all these things. Now, my take on a book like that is he's not answering any questions. He's not telling us why music is meaningful. He's only telling us how we respond. That is to say, and if you don't notice it, for instance, if I walk into a club and I hear boom, 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 my alarms are all up because I say, aha, manipulation is going on. The lights, the darkness, the youthful energy, it's all being used against us. And that's what we don't understand. So not only is there good music and patterns, but there is bad musical patterns. Sometime I'm going to make my video on what is bad music. You should stick around for that. You might learn a couple things. So, interestingly, a lot of these patterns also hold true. These principles also hold true in stage magic and con artistry. So in stage magic, we enjoy being fooled because we know how the pattern is supposed to look. And then someone pulls off something that you say, wow, how did they do that? In that case, we're agreeing to be fooled. But the con artist, the pickpocket, the person who's not just a mentalist on stage, but is a psychic behind the scenes, making money off of people by telling them what they want to hear or things that might get them, these things are deeper. See, the con artist comes to you and says, I know you. And they can read you in a way. You should watch the recent version of William Gresham's book, Nightmare Alley, that was made by Guillermo del Toro. I like it more than the 1940s version, which is a great film too. But it's all about being able to read people. And for instance, there's a thing called cold reading, which is practiced by certain kinds of stage magicians, but it's also practiced by people in the FBI who are trying to figure out whether someone is telling the truth or not. It's also practiced by con artists. And cold reading is a way of getting supposedly really deep private information off of you, and you have no idea they're doing it. Because it's digging in to you, and you don't realize you're sending out patterns as you walk down the street. In a way, we are con artists to ourselves. And we will justify things. Now people always talk about, my serotonin levels are up, my endorphins are rising, like that explains anything. That explains nothing. It just says at this point, your biochemistry will kick in a certain way. But that doesn't tell you why. For instance, why does music affect you? It's not answered by the fact that you have certain biochemical responses when you hear certain things. Because that still doesn't answer the why whatsoever. And in fact, what these kinds of books do is they tell you how to manipulate others through music. So if you read that, after 20 minutes of the rhythm, that's when the kind of hypnotic effect starts, and you're a DJ, you go like, oh, great. So let's just make that first 20 minutes really great. And then after that, it won't matter so much. Although we can kick it up or bring it down. And I say this having been a DJ. And having worked in music in a Christian church. And I know what I can do in a Christian church to get people to feel like God has come down. I'm not saying God doesn't come down. I'm a Christian. But I do say manipulation is really possible everywhere. So here's the thing. Those architects behind the games, behind gambling, behind websites, they're con artists often, even if they don't recognize they are, because they call themselves engineers. But there's enough mass psychology and enough pattern manipulation. It's taking what should be meaningful and turning it into manipulation for profit, but often even more than that. Sometimes this manipulation has another name, propaganda. And we are all susceptible to these things. So, for instance, recently, I'm not going to talk about all the things that are going on in the U.S. government and in Europe and in other places. But it doesn't matter where. The propaganda is through the roof. Everybody's. Their defense, their accusations, and they're all, it's like there's a little button that someone's pushing. I feel like I'm looking at the games that have this sense of manipulation behind them. And it's not manipulation by anyone in particular. All the propaganda that's going on in social media is not being done by anyone. There's no one behind the scenes kicking it. Some people say, well, Bern, you're naive. Of course there is. To which I would go like, the person with the most pattern problems is probably the person involved in conspiracies. Not that there aren't real conspiracies. I know there are. But the truth is, the more you get involved in this, once you start seeing the patterns in one way, it's almost impossible to break out. So what I'm asking is, I did a video a while back called Habit, Addiction, and Ritual. Habit is when the patterns in your life are unquestioned. You brush your teeth every day, you use the restroom every day, you eat food every day, you sleep every day, but you don't really ask any questions about it. Addiction is when some of those patterns start to control you. And in the world we see today, there are engineers behind the scenes manipulating your pattern addictions. And once we realize that the patterns themselves are not God, we can see that I got to ask questions about the patterns. I have to do the patterns that need to be done consciously, which is what a ritual is. Now, there can be bad rituals too. It's not as simple as all rituals are good. Oh, heavens, no. A bad ritual can just simply be an addiction, or it can be something which has really devious ends. But to me, a true ritual that helps us to understand meaning is when you enter into a pattern consciously and you ask yourself about it and you allow the pattern to go on, but you have to ask yourself, how shall I brush my teeth? When I was a kid, I didn't know anything about it. My mother didn't, apart from telling me to brush your teeth, she literally didn't teach me anything about it. And through much painful processing, I developed a more ritual pattern that seems to work for me now. But the question is this: how conscious are you of your habits, your addictions, and your rituals? And are the patterns behind these things controlling you? It's only when you begin to ask that question that you can begin to experience freedom. So, for instance, one of the things I notice, if someone writes something on X or Facebook or whatever, or, comment in a video like this one, that seems designated to get my immediate response, I can't claim to be 100% on this, but usually I'll sit there going, I got it, and then I go, nope. Because it is that thing that's pushing you that is where you're going to have problems. Because in order to retain our humanity in this very abstract, mechanistic age, virtual age, we have to ask questions about the patterns we are all involved with. It's not easy. To me, it takes God, it takes prayer, it takes observation of the people and the world around you. And I wish you well doing that, because you should. Well, okay, I've gotten some of this stuff off my chest. These were kind of preliminary thoughts about these ideas. Mafia Aesthetics and pattern addiction. Well, this is Bern, listening to the rain fall outside here, telling you to have a meaningful day. Go take a walk in nature for no purpose. Do not bring, go take a walk in nature and don't bring any devices with you. Don't listen to anything. Just go. Don't monitor your steps. Just go and see what there is to see. And as I said in my Florentine series, coming back from Florence, The same holds true with viewing art and even movies. Enter into the patterns. Well, I will see you very soon. You will see me from Tbilisi, Georgia. This is Berg saying Drobit, and don't forget, support the channel. We'll meet again very soon.
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.